Hello everybody and welcome back to RE. I hope you've all had a lovely holiday and a lovely half term. And this afternoon we're going to carry on with our RE lesson about the Muslim mosques. We're going to look at the prayer mats today. So recap, can you remember those 2 weeks back now that we last looked at the Muslim mosque? What features on the outside would tell us that the place we are looking at is a mosque? What features did we see? What signs and symbols? And can you remember the names of the features from the outside? About the tall tower, can you remember what that was called? And the circular bit on the top, the symbol that you see, and the ways we can identify from the outside the Muslim mosque. And can you remember what we needed to do if we ever entered a Muslim mosque, or what the Muslims do before they enter and go into the mosque to pray, and why did they do that? Take a look at the pictures and take a minute to have a little recap and remember the things that we talked about before, and have a look at the pictures of the mosque that you drew, and what are the people doing, and what are the symbols showing in these pictures. So prayers. Muslims go to the mosque to pray. And if you remember, one of the features of the mosque inside was the prayer mat, and everyone had them, and men and women prayed separately. And when they went into the hall with no shoes on, and once they'd washed themselves, they would kneel on their prayer mats. They didn't sit down like they do in any other places of worship. They knelt on their prayer mats to pray. And we had a little look at the prayer mats before, but we're going to look a bit more detail today. So Muslims pray 5 times a day. They pray before sunrise, really early in the morning, the afternoon, the sunset, and the evening. And sometimes those times change, but there is a big time gap in between those prayer times, so that each person can get chance to get to the place where they need to be to pray. So it's not just at 12 o'clock or at 1 o'clock. There's times, so for example, between 12 and 3 o'clock. So they have 3 hours gap to make sure that they're in a place where they can be cleanly, and get their prayer mat out and pray somewhere where it's peaceful and quiet. So they can pray anywhere as long as it's clean. But can you remember the special day, the most important day that Muslims went to the mosque to pray? It was Friday, so well done if you got that. And Muslims always face, when they're praying, they always face towards their sacred place, Mecca, which is in a place called Saudi Arabia, and that's a really sacred place for Muslims. And so they make sure that they're always pointing in the direction of Mecca. So sometimes that must mean that wherever they pray, they need to sit down and have a little think about which direction that they're facing. So a Muslim prayer mat is called a sajada, and a sajada is a really colourful mat. If you remember the ones that we looked at before, they were really colourful, and we'll look at some more in a moment. They were really colourful, and each person had their own mat. And remember, the men and the women don't pray together, and they lay their mats down on the floor where it's nice and clean, where they can kneel and pray to their God. And it can be really really bright, with lots of flowers and patterns on it. But can you remember the mosque? The mosque was really beautifully coloured with lots of geometric patterns. Can you remember that word, geometric, with lots of squares and triangles and circular and patterns and repetitive patterns in them? And so the patterns are often symmetrical, which means that both sides are the same. Both sides are the same on their prayer mats, and it's always symmetrical. So they can have pictures of mosques on, or they can have Arabic writing on, like the Quran. So can you remember the Quran is their holy book, and it doesn't have English words in. It has a different language. It has an Islamic language. So sometimes you might see some Islamic writing on the prayer mat, or a picture of a mosque. What other symbols do you think can be on a prayer mat? Can you remember the symbol that's on top of the mosque? we help to identify a mosque when we're looking from the outside. Can you remember the crescent and the star? That might also be on a prayer mat. So here are some examples of some beautiful patterns. So there's the geometric patterns. They've got lots of repetitive patterning with triangles and shapes, and so there can be squares or circles inside. The floral pattern that you can see, which represents the paradise, where their God, where they believe their God is in paradise, and the picture of the mosque at the bottom. And there is an example of some Arabic writing from the Quran, and this reads the king. That says the king in an Arabic language. So there are some examples of what might be on a prayer mat. So let's take a look. Now these aren't individual prayer mats like we said before, but if you look at that floor, the carpet and the mat on the floor, you can see the towers, just like the minaret on the outside, that section off each place for someone to kneel. Someone might also take their own prayer mat and lay that on top, but you can see how that part is sectioned off for people to kneel and pray. And remember, they're praying towards Mecca. And again, this is the same. These are slightly individual, and you can see the lines where it will separate for people to have their own space to pray. Can you see the beautiful colours? And the lovely reds and greens in there, and the beautiful, they've got some geometric patterns and some floral patterns in there. And same with this one, a beautiful floral pattern, and it's symmetrical. Both the sides are the same. So if you've got a piece of paper with paint on one side of that piece of paper, one half of that piece of paper, and you folded it in half, it would print on the opposite side and it would be symmetrical. So that's some beautiful coloured mats there. So another example there of a floral, and there's lots of red mats that I can see, and they're individual places for people to pray. You can see a couple of people praying in the background there. Now these are individual mats lined up, and this looks like a really warm place in a different country, because as you can see, they're outside. Even though they've got a cover over the top, the building goes over their head. You can see to the right hand side here, the outside, and it looks very warm, but you can see the individual mats, but they're the same pattern lined up in rows to where they would pray, and there's someone praying there. Here are some more examples of some prayer mats. So you can see some floral patterns, the symmetry, the symmetrical patterns on all of them. Some geometric patterns on a couple there. And they're beautiful. Lots of red and yellows and orange colours in these beautiful mats. So your task today is going to be, think about the colours, think about the patterns and the shapes and it being symmetrical, and can you design your own prayer mat? Now there's some different ideas on there. You can colour it in, you can draw it and colour one in, you can use some materials if you've got some materials at home or in school, use glue, different coloured paper, and see if you can design your own prayer mat. And you can send and upload your pictures on Tapestry, and I would love to see your images and your pictures. If you would like to go back in the video and pause it onto this page, you can pause it here and keep this up to remind you of the patterns and the colours and the shapes and the examples of the patterns that you need to design your own prayer mat. Good luck, and I can't wait to see your beautiful work, because your mosques were fantastic. So well done for those. See you soon.